Children don't come into our households as a blank slate ever. They come with all sorts of relationships and attachments.
Their life did not begin the day they met us.
They're going to have all of the people that they came in with, and that is what makes them who they are.
When a resource family can honor that connection that their child has to their biological family, it really sets the tone of their self-identity.
Honoring the biological family is crucial to attachment.
If I can find good in the birth family, that means I find good in you, because that's where you came from.
When a child is denied their family, nothing can take its place, but the rest of life will be spent trying to find something to take its place. And it will always be less than, and it will always be rooted in pain.
This is Core Teen, right time training for resource parents. In this episode, we focus on the importance of continued connections with people who matter for young people in care. We'll hear from the experts.
So you want to look at and identify what were those significant relationships.
We'll learn from veteran resource parents.
We tell our kids we can love more than one child. Why couldn't you love more than one parent?
We'll listen to the voices of youth.
No one understands like your sibling does.
And we'll get a rare glimpse into the birth parent experience.
Asking me to be a part of the healing process is really what I would like to do.
As we discover how supporting young people's other connections strengthens their connection to you.
We are biologically programmed to stay connected in family.
There is a connection so deep, so primal, so inherently human that no amount of time or distance, no court order, not even the love of a new family can break it.
That is a biological connection that will never, ever be severed. It doesn't matter to the child if that mother was abusive and just did horrible things. They will always want that connection because that's how strong it is. The biological connection is always just did horrible things.
As the first family that they knew, and who, even though there was abuse and neglect that possibly happened, there was still love. You know, there was still love there.
If you watch every Disney movie out there, what is the number one theme? It's the theme of the loss of a parent. That is every child's worst fear. And for our kids, that's exactly what now has happened. They've lost the most important connection that they've ever had.
You know, foster and adoptive parents, resource parents, guardians, kin caregivers, everyone who's parenting kids who aren't growing up with the woman to whom they were born need to understand that there's loss, and that loss is just an inherent part of adoption, and that loss is real for our kids even if they were adopted at birth. There is still a very primal loss there. So when we look at how can we as the parents minimize loss for our kids, how can we maintain connections, if we give our children access to birth family, it actually draws them closer to us as the adoptive parents than if we fear that.
If a parent tells a child that we are going to wipe the slate clean, that we are going to start fresh, that you're going to become a part of our family, and you no longer have to be concerned about your history, past relationships, and attachments, that tells the child that there is something wrong with them, that their history, their past is bad. So we need to eliminate it, remove it, and give you a new history. That's the wrong message to send.
Birth family connections, especially at the teenage years, have to be honored.
Oftentimes, they know their biological family. They are in contact with their biological family. And so for you to say that that connection is no longer there, once again, disrespects who that youth, that teen is.
I always speak of biological families in the most respectful terms that I can, because disrespecting where they come from is the same as disrespecting that child.
When a resource family can honor that connection that their child has to their biological family, it really sets the tone of their self-identity.
We have to stop demonizing these families, because what we hear from the young people that we serve all the time is that if there were any way for them to return to their family of origin, regardless of how they've been treated, they would go back.
A lot of these kids want to go home, and I guess it's just, that's their family, that's their connection, and they will end up home, no matter what.
So if that is the desire of their hearts, and we know from practical experience and from research that the best possible adult connections for these young people to stabilize their lives is to have some positive connection to biological family, then for crying out loud, that's what we should be doing.
We know from life experience and common sense that connections that matter can't simply be swapped out for new ones. That we don't instantly forget about the people we've lost when those people are no longer in our lives. Those attachments still matter. When a young person must move, everything changes. The people, the house, the neighborhood, the school, the food, the rules, the day-to-day routine. What doesn't change is the significance of the connections that child has made with other people in other settings. What if we could help young people retain those important existing connections while still reaping all of the benefits of living in a safe and healing new environment? What if we could help young people stay connected to people who matter, even when they transition from our home to a permanent placement or independent living? These continued connections keep a young person grounded and create a supportive network that can last a lifetime. These connections can make all the difference.
The idea of self-identity and developing that sense of who am I is part of every child's developmental journey.
There are characteristics that you have that you can trace directly to someone in your family.
Who we look like, who we act like, who we sound like. There is that connection.
So your birth history provides you with a sense of self.
And if it's all negative, what is there to go back to build one's sense of self?
If all they have is stuff from the court reports or negative things that they've heard, then that's what they're going to align with. But if they know that their artistic ability came from their grandmother perhaps, or their musical ability, or their athletic ability, or their gorgeous smile, or their infectious laugh came from their birth family, that gives them something positive to anchor to.
We have to be looking for strengths in the parents themselves so that we can then let that child know if there's anything about them that's like their parent. That's awesome. Because if you've got an awesome kid, there must be something awesome in their parent.
That's why we cannot ignore birth parents. It's why we can't act as if they don't exist. It's why we can't ignore loyalty. The loyalty is about the connection to the goodness of the parent, because it's who I am. Our identity comes from our families.
And so if I can find good in the birth family, that means I find good in you, because that's where you came from, right? And I can't say that only the parts of you that I love are the parts that are like us. We can't do that, right? We want to love the whole child, particularly if they're carrying this shame and this feeling that there was something wrong with them in the first place, or they would still be with their family of origin.
It's helpful to think of openness as a continuum, from no contact on one end and co-parenting on the other.
In the situation where a child can't visit with their biological parents, they can't maybe even have phone calls. I had one child who even phone calls were disastrous for her. So in those cases, you make the space to have the conversations about their parents. Tell me about them. I know you miss them. Tell me.
We honor that family, but we explore with them, what was happening in that family and, the reasons they can't live with that family. Most kids get that, but they don't have to give up caring about that family.
You have to reframe it. And I wish that you could be with your mom and your dad, just because I know you miss them so much. But while they can't take care of you, I'm so glad that you're here with me.
It's important for a young person to understand sometimes that that person still loves you, is still doing the best that they can do with what they've got, but that in fairness, what they've got isn't good enough for you.
So you're reinforcing their story. You're reinforcing the fact that their parents love them. You're reinforcing the fact that you know that they love their parents. But you're also reinforcing, but you're safe and you're cared for and it'll be okay.
You can have access by being open to your kids asking questions and not having your mouth get tight and your hands get tight and your voice get tight when they're talking about their birth family. To wonder aloud if they're thinking about their birth parents. To look for what are the things that you see in them and love in them that came from their birth family, because it didn't all come from you.
Openness could include phone calls, letters, email, and social media without face-to-face contact. Or there might be get-togethers for special occasions, sporting competitions, or life cycle events.
The other thing I do when they're grieving is I reconnect them with their families. I push really hard for visits to increase instead of decrease. If someone is missing someone, less time isn't going to help. It's going to be more time. This is counterintuitive to most foster parents. Most foster parents are like, oh, they're coming home sad and they're acting out and doing all this. The visits are bad. We need to stop them. I lean in and say, what other opportunities can we have for these two people to connect? Can they go to a school play? Can they go to a baseball game? Can they go to church? All of those different things. That connection, though, is super important for us to honor.
If the get-togethers are positive and the youth wants more contact, it may be appropriate to plan more frequent visits and outings. Openness does not always refer to interactions with birth parents. Continued connections with extended family members can also be important.
Maybe it's contact with siblings. Maybe there was a grandma who so adored your little babe and she couldn't parent him, but she knows the family history. She remembers his mom when she was little, and that's going to be invaluable to that child.
This is not a competition. It's not either or. It's not picking and choosing. It's helping young people sort out and how their needs are met in families. Families are the best source of healing for young people. And it may not just be one family. It's not you having all the answers.
And to have the humility to say that I want you as my child to grow up with the best of your birth family and the best of our adoptive family, and weave that into a tapestry that is just a masterful you that's like nobody else.
For young people who have been separated from their families, the sibling connection takes on added significance.
If you have a child in your home and you know they have a sibling out there, you should do whatever you can in your power to nurture that relationship.
Going through a really abusive home and where you're getting hit on the daily, you are hurt every day, no one understands like your sibling does. My little brother got the worst of it. And he would always come to me and I would hold him and I was the one that was there. He needed me.
Our science and common sense teach us that siblings are the most valuable, longest lasting relationship in your life. This is their whole generation. This is who their kids, aunts and uncles and cousins are going to be.
That's the one connection that they will always have.
They've often been in a role where they've had to take care of their siblings. They may feel some responsibility for the fact that their siblings are in care.
I raised these boys, and to not have them, it's just like, how do you deal with that?
They are feeling guilty that as the surrogate parent, they weren't able to keep their family together.
I raised my siblings, so being separated from them was hard.
Letting go of like guiding them was really hard, and it still is.
It is very important that these relationships are cultivated.
Even though there are a lot of challenges associated with bringing the siblings together and allowing the space for that, it's worth it because the payoff is so great in having them feel that sense of connection to who they are.
The relationship between me and my brothers, it's like we've been through hell and back, but that's my family. Those are my boys.
With or without a goal of reunification, with or without physical contact, there are times when a birth parent can play an important role in a young person's life.
I know families who have come out of foster settings and the birth parent just isn't going to be able to parent long term, but they are a really good role model still, and they are able to sort of maintain an extended family role and stay connected, and they can give background information, they can give medical information, they can be a source of stability in the child's life, someone who's known them from beginning to end. And while they may not be doing the day-to-day interactions of parenting, that's still hugely valuable to the child's development.
Most teens know where their parents are, know where their relatives are. They have already made contact with relatives. So the issue of whether you will be allowed to have contact with relatives or not really is a non-issue. The question is, what parameters are we going to need to discuss and put in place regarding that contact?
You know what, young people are going online, they're going onto their social media, they're staying connected in one way or the other. So there's that. That's the first thing. That's like a truth we cannot hide from. But then there's also the beauty and joy of being able to leverage social media to keep those extended family connections.
You know, the more that you can be involved as the foster or adoptive parent in helping to navigate that relationship, the better it's going to be, and it's going to actually help you to be more connected to the teenager as well, because they see that you honor and respect their biological family and the connection that they have with that.
If you have teens in your home, they should be involved in the decision making, or at least in the discussion. But they will need help discerning what is safe, what is in their best interest, even what is possible. This is where resource parents can play an important role.
So exactly what that means is really being open first to learning what's important and really hearing from them what relationships they value, what relationships they want to continue, exploring with them what that's going to mean, because that's going to be different for each relationship that they have. To help them to develop a not all bad, not all good, this is part of who I am, and I can decide how much of that I want to continue to be part of who I am, and then to help them to navigate that, because now you're the responsible adult that can help to shape those relationships with them, and learning how to do that balance.
And I think it's still a work in progress and probably will be a lifelong work in progress.
Yeah. And then you've got the developmental phase of adolescents who sometimes want to let you help and sometimes want to do it themselves, and trying to figure out what that is and provide them with enough skills that they can do what they can do safely and trust you enough to come to you for help.
You are not enemies with this family of origin. In fact, you're on the same team.
Birth parents, most of them, love their children deeply, but sometimes they don't have the parenting capacity to keep them safe.
A lot of times the biological parents of the kids that we're caring for are our children grown up. So a lot of them grew up in foster care. A lot of them have significant histories of developmental trauma and generational trauma.
At one point, I was that child that was being protected. It was super hard to separate my experience coming into the child welfare system as a foster youth than my experience as a parent. I was just wrapped up in shame and guilt and humiliation.
They love their children. They just can't raise their children. I have the ability to raise them, but they have the ability to reach them in a way that I can't. So whenever possible, when you're able to bring those parents into your lives, do it. Don't be scared.
I allowed birth parents to visit their kids at my house. You know, helping the birth parents see how my husband and I disciplined kids, helping them see what healthy meals looked like, helping them see healthy sibling interaction was all part of raising capacity. And we didn't say that. That wasn't how we approached it. It was more like, do you want to come have dinner with your kids? And yeah, if they could, they did.
Asking me to be a part of the healing process is really what I would like to do. We've already been to the part of, we're here, we got visits, all the details of how they should be safe and who should be responsible watching what, right? But if we could kind of step, we know that and we honor that, But let's move into like the good stuff, like the healing. Where's all the fun at? Like, let's bake the cookies, right? Like, okay, Ashley's not allowed to be alone, have unsupervised visits yet, right? That might be hard for Ashley to kind of hear and accept. So what I'm gonna do is, me as a foster parent, maybe I'll do some visits for a little bit, for a little while. That way, I could kind of teach her and coach her on some stuff, and she gets a double whammy. She gets to spend time being in the home with me and my family, kind of learning some household skills, baking cookies, spending time with Sammy, doing homework, helping with laundry.
Capacity can be raised. And there's a team of people that should be helping that parent to raise the capacity. And guess what? I can be on that team by taking her to the soccer games, taking her to the medical doctor with me, modeling behavior that helps her raise her capacity, helping her understand her own worth.
At the core of it, you both love that child.
Families of origin almost always want the very best for their kids. You may have different opinions about what that looks like or how that plays out, but you're on the same team in wanting what's best for this child.
One of my mottos is never too many people to love or to love me.
So when you give them permission to miss their birth parents or their birth family, or to wonder about them, or to want contact with them, it actually brings you much, much, much closer in your parent-child relationship.
Sometimes when kids start to form attachments with foster families, and they realize it subconsciously or consciously, they rebel so hard and they try and push you away because they don't want to feel disloyal. And so it's important to talk about how lots of people can love a child and that you can love lots and lots and lots of people. And that's actually really good. That can be really hard sometimes, right? Especially when you're going into adoption and you want to finally, just really feel like that child is your child.
That's where the divided loyalty comes in. It's that, oh, I have to give this up to have this. It's the challenge for resource parents because they want to love this kid and give this kid all and be all, but you cannot be. In the world of resource families, you cannot be. This child loves another. So we embrace that love and we look at it as a both and, not an either or, but a both and. So we understand loyalty is a good thing. It's a good thing because it says a child loves and can love, and we honor that love.
One of the things I had to learn was being able to step back and understand that there's a role that I can fill and I can take care of you and I can be there for you, but I'm not going to replace the mom that you know as your mom. And I'm not trying to do that.
So opening up the space to say, hey, I'm maybe your second mom. I'm here now, I'm here to be everything that you need me to be, and I honor who she was. And we will maybe celebrate her birthday. We will always honor Mother's Day with 2 cards instead of just 1. Having the atmosphere and the culture of the family that says it's okay to have both. Not asking our children to choose between one or the other.
There's a lot of loyalty issues that come with adoption. And I mean, I know it with my own kids. I know no matter what I do, no matter how terrible I decided to become, my kids are always going to love me and I'm always going to be mom. So why would I expect anything different from the kids who come to our home through the child welfare system?
I've had both personal and professional experience with this, and I still have hard times on Mother's Day, right? Because I raised 4 girls out of foster care that came into my home at 14, all of them. And today, they're 30-something. And I still think to myself, who gets the first call on Mother's Day? Because I think I've replaced somebody. But you can't ever replace somebody. They're going to have all of the people that they came in with. And that is what makes them who they are.
It's always a little hard, it's always a little uncomfortable, but ultimately working through it is for the good of the kids in your life.